Your stories. Your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome, everybody. This is Peter Schiff here at the Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com. On a Monday, the Dow getting off to, I guess, a strong start. I don't know. In terms of gold, the market is down. The Dow is up 123 points, which is about 1%. Gold is up $30, which is about 1.7%. That means the price of gold, the value of the Dow, the real value of the Dow, continues to sink well below the 6-to-1 level. So as far as I'm concerned, the market is making new lows, even as the media will show that the market is rising. But, of course, it's not rising in terms of real money, gold. It is rising in terms of funny money, U.S. dollars, which are sinking not only against gold and stocks today, but against other fiat currencies, although the dollar is not losing a lot of ground against other fiat currencies. You know, the yen is actually down a bit today. Again, lots of saber rattling about beating up the Japanese yen by the government in Japan. So it is central banks that are inflating. That is what is driving the safe haven buying in gold. Again, it is a safe haven from inflation, from monetary debasement. That is the only thing that gold is a safe haven from, and that is why people are buying it, contrary to the media spin that people are not worried about inflation. They're just buying it because they're afraid of some unknown threats that have nothing to do with inflation, when it is all about inflation, and it always has been about inflation. The gold stocks today are making a big move. Gold stocks are up 3.35%, finally outperforming the price of gold. The Huey index is now above 600. This is the first time we've been above 600 since, let me go way back. We did peak above it April 11th, and then we peaked above it again. No, April 11th is the only time we got above it. And the high back in April was just under, what's that high look like? 609. So that is also the all-time record high. So if the Huey index goes up another 8 points, it'll be a record high. Of course, the last time that the Huey made a record, the price of gold was hundreds and hundreds of dollars an ounce lower than it is today. So certainly, again, has a long way to go. You know, for kicks, I was on Yahoo Finance looking at a lot of the gold stocks to see the analyst opinions. And, you know, for supposedly a bubble, if you look at all the gold stocks, you'll see a lot of holds on there. Not a lot of sells, but a lot of holds, a lot of market performs, underperforms. In fact, a lot of the most recent moves on the mining stocks, if you look at some of the big investment firms 6 months ago, a year ago, was downgrading, lowering their opinion on gold stocks. So, you know, if this really was a bubble, not only would these gold stocks be on fire, but everybody would have buys on them. Everybody would have strong buys. But instead, again, you have a lot of the major brokerage firms have been cautious on gold stocks for years, while they've been far more optimistic on conventional stocks that have performed very, very poorly during that same time period. In fact, you know, there was an article on Barron's over the weekend on Ron Paul and the fact that he's been buying a lot of gold. And it was the title of the article is Candidate of Doom and Gloom. And it talks about Ron Paul's portfolio being a major bet against the U.S. economy, which, in fact, I guess it is, but it really doesn't point out that it's been a winning bet. I mean, betting against the U.S. economy has been far more profitable than betting on the U.S. economy. And rather than giving Ron Paul credit for having bet correctly, the idea is that, well, he's unpatriotic for betting against America. And in fact, the writer even insinuates that the reason that Ron Paul voted against raising the debt ceiling was that because that if the debt ceiling wasn't raised and we defaulted, that would have been good for his portfolio of gold mining stocks. Well, the reality is the reverse. Remember, I was saying that if the government didn't raise the debt ceiling, that was one circumstance that would actually be bearish for gold. But that by raising the debt ceiling and guaranteeing more debt, that was the most bullish scenario for gold, and that's exactly what happened. We raised the debt ceiling, and the price of gold is skyrocketing. So if anything, Ron Paul's vote against raising the debt ceiling was actually contrary to his own self-interest based on his investment portfolio. Because had Ron Paul been successful in convincing the other members of Congress not to raise the debt ceiling and to cut government spending instead, that would have been bearish for gold. Gold would have gone down. Gold stocks would have gone down. And Ron Paul's investment portfolio would have suffered. The reason that gold is on fire right now, the reason that gold stocks are moving up, is precisely because the debt ceiling was raised over Ron Paul's objection. Yet the writer of this article in Barron's somehow attributes Ron Paul's motivation to being his own self-interest, and he put the interests of his country aside so he could vote against raising the debt ceiling so that his gold stocks would go up. It's actually unbelievable, and it shows that he's not even watching what's going on. He's not even looking at the fact that we raised the debt ceiling and the gold stocks are going up and the gold price is going up. But probably what's even more important about, or outrageous maybe, about this this article is the way it infers that Ron Paul has been a stop clock because he's been owning gold stocks. And I've had the same allegation against me. Here's what it says here. This one I'm going to quote. Fortunately for Ron Paul and his army of gold bug disciples, the stop clock investment strategy finally seems to be paying off. Finally? Finally? The article points out that Ron Paul has been investing in gold stocks for over 12 years, since the late 1990s. It hasn't finally paid off. It's paid off every single year over the last 12 years, with the exception of 1 year, 2008. And in fact, the article even goes out of its way to mention how badly gold stocks performed in 2008. Who cares how badly they performed in 2008? Where are they now? This article is being written in 2011. We now know that the losses in 2008 have been completely eradicated by the rally. Not the case with the regular stock market. So instead of giving Ron Paul credit for having a foresight to have stayed in gold stocks for 12 years, instead he's saying, well, he was a stop clock. Well, what about all the other candidates who just kept their money in the S&P 500 over the past 12 years? Aren't they stop clocks? Oh, no, they're prudent. Why? They've done the same thing for the last 12 years. The difference is Ron Paul's strategy has made a lot of money, and their strategy is not. So why is Ron a stop clock for buy and hold in gold stocks, but nobody else is a stop clock for buying and holding, non-gold stocks? It's obviously the writer's own opinion that is seeping into this. And in fact, he has a really good quote here, and I'm going to look for it during the commercial break, where he's comparing Ron Paul's investment strategy to the status quo and trying to criticize it because he's breaking all the rules of investment by, anyway, not being diversified. So don't go away. We'll be back with more of the Peter Schiff Show after this break.
The Peter Schiff Show.
It's clear to just about everybody that the global economic sands are shifting. Have you positioned your investments to help ride the tide? For more than a decade, U.S. stocks have gone nowhere, even while inflation has steadily eroded the dollar's purchasing power. And now, with Washington's money machine spinning out of control and deficits and regulations swamping American productivity, U.S. stocks are looking even riskier, and the bond market may be the next bubble waiting to pop. But most brokers and
.com, and we are talking about the highly biased article written about Ron Paul in Barron's magazine. Rather than praising him for his investment success. The article really vilifies him, questions his patriotism, his integrity, and really undermines the success of his investment strategy. One of the parts of the article, he says that Ron Paul's portfolio is a financial planner's nightmare. Right? Most pros say that gold mining stocks should be a small part of a diversified portfolio. Okay, well, it's a financial planner's nightmare, but it's actually been their clients' dream if they actually were smart enough to have a portfolio like Ron Paul's. I mean, if you follow the typical financial planner, you've lost money over the last 12 years. What's so great about that? But here's where I think the article really, is deliberately slanted. It has pot of gold, Ron Paul's top 10 holdings, and it shows the return over the last 1 year and over the last 3 years. Now, that is not really a great time horizon to show the returns because the gold stocks have really lagged over the last 3 years. The article points out that all of these positions have been in Ron Paul's portfolio since the late 1990s and that he added to his positions in 2003. So all of these stocks were bought earlier than 2003, yet they only show the returns for 1 year and 3 year. And I'm going to mention these stocks. These are not investment recommendations, for my compliance guys. I'm just looking at the article, the stocks that Ron Paul owns, to show you how biased. Okay, they showed him he owned Gold Corp, GG. All right? That stock, it shows over 1 year, it's up 19%, over 3 years, over 17%. But if you go back to 2001, and of course he owned it, the stock's up over 1,000%. Now, why didn't they put that in there? Well, they don't want to show that Ron Paul's got 1,000% in Gold Corp. What about Barrick? They show that with a 12.5% return over 1 and 3 years. Well, over the last 8 years or 9 years or 7 years, it's up 300%. Newmont Mining, that shows a 1% return over 1 year, 12% over 12 years, but since 2001, it's up 300%. Look at this one, Agnico Eagle, 1% gain for the last year, 5.8% gain for the last 3 years. But if you go back to 2001, 700% gain. 700% gain for Ron Paul, yet they're not giving him credit for that gain. Anglo Gold, AU, okay, he's got that in there. They show a 2% return for the last year, 19% for the last 3 years. But it's 300% if you go back to early 2000s when Ron Paul owned it. But here it gets better. IAM Gold, IAG, 3.6% return in the last year. Hey, 52% for the last 3 years. But the return since the early 2000s, over 1,000% for IAM Gold. Mag Silver, it shows a gain for Mag Silver of 9.7% over 3 years. But over the last 8 years or so since he's owned it, it is up over 1,000%. Same thing with Pan American Silver, up over 1,000% since Ron Paul bought it. But again, over the last 3 years, up just 4.7%, and over the last 1 year, just 22%. Here's the best one, Silver Wheaton. Silver Wheaton, this is the biggest winner that they show Ron Paul having, with a 49% return over 3 years and a 74% return over 1 year. Yet, Silver Wheaton, since 2001, when Ron Paul, and that's earlier than he owned it, that stock is up 2,000%. 2,000%. So Ron Paul has got winners in his portfolio. He's got, in this list of Ron Paul's top 10 holdings, he's got 3 stocks that are up over 1,000%, one stock that's up 2,000%. The smallest gainer he's got, right? The smallest return Ron Paul's got on any of these stocks is 300%. Those are his losers. Those are his dogs. The dogs of his top 10 are only up 300%. Where is the Dow in the last? It's down. It's down. So here is a guy who has hit it out of the park with just about every stock pick he's made. He's beat all the best strategists on Wall Street, all the top money managers, you probably couldn't even find a hedge fund that's done as well as Ron Paul. Yet, where is it? This is an investment paper? Where are the accolades? Where's the, oh, my God, the guy got it right. Gee, he really understood the U.S. economy. He knew the market was going to go nowhere. He knew the gold was going to go up. He had the foresight to put his money where his mouth is and go against all the conventional wisdom, do exactly what all the experts say not to do. He put all his money in gold, and guess what? Look at the phenomenal returns that Ron Paul made. That's what this article should be about. Let's compare the money that Ron Paul made with his investments to all of his opponents. There is no way that any of Ron Paul's opponents have done anywhere near as well managing their money as Ron Paul. Hey, maybe that shows, hey, if he knows enough about economics and the markets to avoid all the stocks that went down and just buy the stocks that went up, where the worst stock he got is a 300% gain. I mean, I don't even think any of his opponents, their best stock is up 300%. Chances are. I mean, maybe they got lucky. Maybe somebody owned Apple, but it was probably just a small part of their portfolio or something. But, I mean, that's what the story should have been, that Ron Paul nails it, that he hits it out of the park, that he beats everybody. Gee, I mean, give the guy some kudos. I mean, this should have been a positive article on Ron Paul because it was examining his investment strategy, where he invested his money. Can you imagine if it was any other candidate and they had these kind of returns? If it was not gold stocks, if they had just happened to pick the right stock? Can you imagine the flattering article that would be written about a candidate whose top 10 stocks were up anywhere between 300 and 2,000%? Not a single loser, not one loser in the bunch, not even close, during a period of time where the market is down, where the NASDAQ is down by over 50%, where the Dow is down, that he got all these winners and not say, hey, this guy really, really did a good job. Anyway, don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I got a lot of people on hold, so let me grab a few calls. First up is Chris calling from Manhattan. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. I got a couple questions. The first one is, what is the benefit to QE3, or if they institute QE3, if rates are already low and actually lower than where they were?
Well, there is no real benefit to the economy, but the benefit is to the Fed is to try to keep blowing air into a bubble. Look, what does the Fed know how to do? Print money. If that doesn't work, they print more. That's what QE is about. It's a desperation. It's a monetary Hail Mary. It's just print money and let's stop the nominal fall in housing prices or stock prices. But anyway, look, I took too long on the Ron Paul stuff. I got to rush. We got a guest coming up after the break. If you want to talk about this more at the top of the next hour, be happy to have you. Hold on. Anyway, everybody, don't go away. We got a great guest coming up, Seth Eisenberg. We will be right back.
Schiff Show.
Hi, this is Peter Schiff. I founded Euro Pacific Precious Metals because many of my clients were being bamboozled into buying gold products that are poor investments. Using bait-and-switch tactics, many gold companies push products like numismatics, proof sets, and leverage contracts that are great for sellers, but a nightmare for buyers. My new company, Euro Pacific Precious Metals, only offers top-quality, well-known coins and bullion.
Attorney in both here in Connecticut and New York, and he co-founded with his wife Terry the Association to Reduce the National Debt. Now, it is a nonprofit, nonpartisan charity dedicated to reducing the national debt. Now, obviously, the charity hasn't been that successful because the national debt is skyrocketing, but I think Seth's heart is in the right place, even if maybe it seems like he's spitting in the ocean here. But, Seth, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Peter.
All right, so tell me a little bit about this charity, and actually, how much have you raised to reduce the national debt?
Okay, well, we've actually only been in existence for about a month, and in that month we've raised about $10,000 with pledges for thousands more, and we're gaining more and more interest every day.
Now, are those donations tax deductible?
I believe the answer is yes. We have, applied for 501c3
because
status.
wouldn't that kind of almost be a self-defeating contribution? Because if you can deduct from your taxes your contribution to reduce the national debt, the deduction would actually increase the national debt, and so you would just kind of be canceling yourself out.
Well, there is that theory. Of course, the percentage of the deduction is less than the amount of the contribution, depending on your tax bracket and how that works. But I think an important way to look at it is like this. When you pay taxes, you don't get to decide where your money goes. Washington does, and they can decide to build a bridge from California to Afghanistan or some other pork project, whereas with our program, the money goes to the national debt, and it's given to the Treasury on the condition that it only be used to pay down the debt. So we actually have a voice for once in our lives to tell Washington how to use our money.
But money is kind of fungible in the sense that just because you give them money to reduce the national debt doesn't mean it actually reduces the national debt. Like I remember my father was protesting this back in the 1960s. There were a lot of people here in Connecticut that were sending food or to North Vietnam, who we were fighting in the war. So they were basically aiding our enemies. And the people that were sending it were saying, well, we're not sending weapons. We're sending food. This is just food so that people can eat. And my father made the point that, well, if you send them food, then they have more money for weapons because now they don't have to buy food. And it's kind of like if you send the government money, then they say, okay, well, we have this money, so we can run up a bigger debt. So because we have this extra money, we can spend even more. And that simply by giving them money, you're not going to reduce the debt. You're just giving them more money to spend. They don't have to spend your money, but because you give them money, then other money that now they're free to spend that maybe would have been applied to the national debt, but now they don't have to apply it because they got your extra cash.
Well, the government, one, doesn't know, one, if we're going to give them money, and two, how much, so it's hard for them to budget that. Also, when we give the contributions, the Department of the Treasury gives us a letter confirming that it was deposited to credit to reduce the public debt. And sure, no one can stop. Hopefully the people can stop, but obviously Washington can continue on their spending spree that they've been doing for the last 150 years. But that's another aspect that we as Americans need to focus on. And this is not a magic bullet what we're doing here. It's to bring people involved, to get them involved in being part of the solution, to raise awareness. But there's the other side, too. We need to keep pressure on Washington to restrain their spending, and, we cannot keep increasing the debt.
But that's my point. How do you keep the pressure on them to restrain spending if you're sending them money to spend? I think it actually might be better if you were advocating that people don't send any money in. Kind of like my father was, don't even pay your taxes because then the government's going to have less money to spend. But you're actually telling people to send them more, to just keep sending them money and then expect them not to spend it. Of course they're going to spend it.
Well, but it's supposed to be used to eliminate existing debt. So
but that's not what the government's going to use it for. They're just going to say, oh, we got extra money. Now we can spend even more. Because
if they do that, then they're violating the statute.
But it doesn't matter because it's all fungible. Remember, if the government has record amounts of revenue now, yet the deficit is the highest it's ever been. So you got all this money flowing into the Treasury. It's not, yet they're spending it. The more money that you send them, I don't know how much time you're putting into it, but I would think that there's better uses of your time to try to reduce government spending other than helping to sustain it by having people send additional money beyond their tax liability, but send even more money that might have been used for a more productive purpose. Maybe it could have been used to fund a wealth-generating activity in the private sector, or maybe it could have been donated to a charity that might have used the money much better than the government would.
Well, I don't think we're facilitating extra spending. I think they're going to use the money as the law requires them to. But the important thing is that we're getting people involved. We're raising awareness. The whole circus of the debt ceiling thing, there was a benefit to that in that it brought the issue to the public's attention. But there was also a disservice to the public that people actually thought the debt ceiling was the issue, when it was the debt itself that's the issue. And by getting people actually involved and keeping their attention to it, we're trying to show people that this is a personal issue. It's going to affect them personally and individually, and they need to jump on board with us so that we can keep the pressure on Washington to address reducing the debt itself.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100% that it wasn't the ceiling that was the problem. It was the ceiling that was the solution. The debt was the problem, and the government avoided the solution by raising the ceiling. But you're missing my point that by giving them money, even though it's earmarked to reduce the debt, by reducing the debt somewhat, you're freeing up additional money that might have gone to reduce the debt, but now doesn't have to go to reduce the debt, can now be spent. I don't think that what you are doing will at all reduce the national debt. Now, I think if you want to focus attention on the debt and how irresponsible and reckless it is, I think that's a great thing to do. I just would not send any money to Washington because you're sending them the wrong message. The message you're sending them is, we want you to solve the debt problem with more money. We want you to take more money from the American public in order to reduce the debt. And I don't think that is going to be the way to do it. We want to reduce the debt by reducing the size of government, by reducing the amount of money the government spends and the amount of resources the government drains from the productive part of our economy. And you don't do that by feeding the beast. You do that by starving the beast.
Well, I don't think that's the message we're sending to Washington. I think the message we're showing is that the people, American people, want real answers. We need a real solution to the long-term debt problem. We're willing to stand up and help out and do something about it, but we also demand Washington do something real, too. You know, if they can actually get their act in gear and reduce deficit spending, then everything we do to add to help reduce the debt is good. You've said plenty of times that lower debt is the answer, and any amount to extent to which we can lower the debt ultimately benefits the country.
Yeah, well, I think that if we can lower it, it does benefit the country. I just don't think your contributions will net lower it. But, you know, maybe there are some people out there. Have you called up Warren Buffett?
I have not personally called him yet, but he's on our list.
Well, I mean, he's always talking about the fact that he thinks he should pay more in taxes. You know, why he should be your biggest donor. Maybe you could why don't you call up Warren Buffett and ask him for a few billion? It still wouldn't really make much of a dent, but it would be a start. You know, I mean, why don't you see what old Warren has? He's complaining he's not paying enough in taxes anyway.
I agree with you. You know, the strange thing is, you know, there's Warren Buffett and a whole list of other so-called millionaires that want these increased taxes on them. But again, there's a distinction between taxes versus money going towards the debt. Taxes, I agree with you, that just goes and allows the government to go ahead on a spending spree and do whatever they want. Whereas, again, we want the money earmarked to actually lower existing debt to hopefully, you know, reduce the obligation.
But, you know, of course, if you actually collected enough money to eliminate the entire debt, they would just go on a spending spree because now they would be unrestrained from debt. They'd say, hey, there's no more debt. Now we can really start spending. But anyway, hey, don't go away. We'll continue this discussion after the break. You're listening to the Peter Schiff Show on SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Do you take Viagra? What if we could promise you the same results for less than $3 a pill? Look, at $18 a pill, you're getting taken to the cleaners. Our pill delivers the exact same results for just $3, and it comes with a no questions asked, money-back guarantee. We'll do the math for you. You save more than $15 per pill for the same results. Want more? We'll give you 40 blue pills for $99 and add 4 more pills.
Charity or nonprofit organization dedicated to helping to reduce the national debt through contributions from Americans. Anyway, Seth, so do you have any idea? I mean, what do you think, optimistically, realistically, Warren Buffett aside, what do you think you might be able to raise towards reducing the debt?
Theoretically, we should be able to raise billions of dollars. I mean, you know, if everybody pitched in something, and especially if we got corporations on board and people like Warren Buffett, there should be billions of dollars. And we know that's a fraction of the national debt. But first of all, you have to start somewhere. And second of all, we need to get Americans involved, right? Nothing is happening now other than it getting worse. I mean, the debt ceiling deal accomplished nothing. I think you'll agree with that. In the super committee, I don't think anyone thinks it's going to be any different circus other than making the problem worse.
No, they do. Look, the president, they just had a committee. They had this huge bipartisan committee on reducing the debt. They made a bunch of recommendations, and they were dead on arrival. I mean, Congress has been doing this my entire life. in order to avoid solving a problem, instead of addressing it, they set up a committee so they can pretend they're addressing it. They waste even more money on the committee, and then they completely ignore whatever recommendations the committee makes. And so the committee to study ways to reduce the deficit actually increased the deficit because we had to pay for the committee.
But I agree, and that's why we need to start. I mean, we're trying to lead people to do something differently because somebody has to do it. I mean, I don't really see anybody doing it.
Well, I got an idea, though, because I think that just simply sending in some extra money so that government can waste it, even if you think they earmark it, it simply enables additional spending. I think something maybe that you can do is encourage the people who might be donating to reduce the national debt, send their money to Ron Paul, get him elected president. Because then he might actually reduce the national debt because he'll stop the spending. And that's what we need. That's the source of the debt. The debt comes from spending. So we have to stop the government from spending. We don't do that by giving them more money to spend. We do that by taking money away from them.
Well, we can't support individual candidates because that's a restriction on nonprofit organizations. But we do, we're not just all about accepting money and giving it to the government. That's not the entirety of our program. That's part of the problem. That's part of what we do, but it's about educating Americans about how the debt affects them in their personal, individual lives and in their communities, educating them about how it will affect their children and grandchildren, raising awareness about the debt and why we need to do something now, not in September, not October, not November, not 10 years ago, and to keep the issue in the forefront of people's minds. Once this debt ceiling went away, the deal was made, it wasn't headline news anymore. And so everybody thinks everything's wonderful, but it's not.
You know what would be interesting? You know how they have a check off on your tax return where you could check a box that you want a couple of bucks go to the election? Imagine if you could check off a box to show how much money of your taxes you want to go towards reducing the national debt. I bet most people, I would check 100% of it. But even if everybody checked, I want all my taxes going to reduce the national debt would be just as big because they would just borrow more money.
Well, right, and that's why we need responsible fiscal legislation. We need people in office that have the strength to do what's right for this nation. And we can't borrow indefinitely. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like the actual size of the problem. It's not just the funded portion of the debt, which is now scheduled to hit $16 trillion. When this next debt ceiling is hit, probably sometime within the next year, because I'm sure we're going to rack up $2 trillion of debt within a year, especially if I'm right and that we're in a recession or headed to one quickly. But if you include all of the off-budget items, such as the debt of Fannie and Freddie or student loans or all that stuff, and then you kick in all of the unfunded obligations of things like Social Security and Medicare, you're talking about 50, 100 trillion or more worth of debt.
That's right.
So what we really need is serious reform. Even if you can send them a couple of $1 billion, ultimately it's not going to do any good, even if it does reduce the debt, because we're starting from such a huge number. We need real substantive cuts in government spending. Otherwise, is it possible that you delay the inevitable? Let's say if we're about to go over the edge of a cliff, and if we're going to get there, in a year, maybe if we pay off the debt a little bit, will we get there in 1/10 of 1 second later? Maybe. But it's still, you're not in the scheme of things. No one's going to notice because we're still going to go over that cliff.
That's right, and I agree with you, with that. And we do need substantive reform. And I'm hoping, again, we put in leaders that have the strength and not so worried about their reelection to actually do that. And then our efforts become that much more meaningful, because if we can actually at least balance our budget, and maybe being better, obviously run a surplus, but if it's a balance, then what we do adds to that, and we got to start somewhere. I mean, you can't start 10 years ago from now to start paying down the debt. We have to start today.
But if that were the case, though, might it not be a better use of your time to be partisan, to not be nonprofit, to be active in a campaign of a guy that actually might do something like a Ron Paul that actually wants to slash government spending, the only candidate that's talking about meaningful cuts and that has voted in the past and that has never voted. Ron has never voted for an unbalanced budget. He's never voted once to increase the national debt. He's the only one that can say that. And so that's what we need. We need principles like that. We need people to go to Washington and put an end to this, because we can protest all we want, but as long as we're sending them our money, that's not going to send them a message. They'll just keep on spending that. We gotta send some of these politicians pink slips. We got to get them out of office, and we got to replace them with people who actually care about the country.
There's no doubt that the fiscally irresponsible politicians need to go and fiscally responsible ones need to come in. One of the reasons it's important for us to remain nonpartisan is because the divisiveness is what has led to the charade that we saw last month, and it's going to lead to the charade we're going to see in November and December with the super committee. We're trying to bridge the gaps to show every American that this affects everybody. I don't care if you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're Tea Party, you're Communist, Socialist. I don't care what you are. This is your problem, and you need to be part of the answer. You need to get on board. Doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you're poor. We're all going to be wiped out if we don't do something about it now.
Yeah, do you have any idea the political makeup of the people who are donating? And by the way, if somebody does want to donate to this, how do they do it?
Sure, they can go right to our website, www.reducethenationaldebt.org. There's information there. You can donate right over our secure website, or if you prefer to send a check, there's our contact information is there.
Do you have do you have the debt clock on your site?
We have it on. It's on our blog. There's a link to our blog, which does have the debt clock going.
Because I'm sure that the debt clock is going to show the debt rising at a much faster rate than you're taking in contributions. So it's almost like you're in a boat and you're trying to bail out water with a Dixie cup, but it's gushing in through all these holes, and even as you're bailing out the water level is still rising.
Well, it's true. We can't deny the facts, but I know with my own personal life, every dollar I pay down my debt is one less dollar of debt I have.
Well, that's because on an individual level, yeah, because you're actually paying down debt. But if somebody gave you money, let's say you were about to go out and buy yourself a television set, and someone, or you were about to pay off some debt, you're about to pay off $600 in debt, and I said, hey, I'm going to give you $600, but you have to use this to pay off your debt. You'd say, great, thank you. Here's $600. I'm going to pay off my debt. Now I'm going to take the $600 that I was about to use to pay off my debt and buy myself a new television set. So by giving you money, theoretically, to force you to apply towards paying down your debt, I enabled you to go buy a television set that you weren't going to buy. And technically, yes, you used my money to pay off your debt, but you used my money instead of your own money. Now you went and bought something. So that is the problem, with the government.
Well, it's true, and that's why part of our mission is awareness, so that people will use their exercise to vote and do the right thing come November. Certain people need to go home, and certain new people need to come in, because there is no quick fix to this problem. We've created it over many, many, many years, and it's going to take many, many years to fix. But somebody needs to start fixing it, because what they've come up with, starting in 10 years.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I applaud you on your effort and what you're trying to do, and awareness, definitely. But I just can't get my arms around giving these clowns any more money, especially if there are some people that are struggling to make ends meet. Keep the money in the private sector. Don't send it to Washington to be squandered in the public sector. That is the problem. But anyway, Seth, thanks a lot. You mean well, and I wish you luck. Thanks for coming on the show. Anyway, everybody else, stick around. We got another hour coming up of the Peter Schiff Show. Plenty of people on hold. Lots to talk about, including the new rally in gold and silver. The Ron Paul portfolio is kicking some butt today. Anyway, we will be back, so stick around.
The Peter Schiff Show.
You can always access the Peter Schiff Show commercial-free and on demand by becoming a Schiff Premium member. Go to schiffradio.com and become a member today.
Are you tired of spending money for metal canning lids year after year? Then stop. Stop buying metal lids and get Tatler reusable canning lids. Made of USDA and FDA-approved food-grade plastic, Tatler canning lids let you safely store emergency preparedness foods for years. Traditional metal lids are single-use throwaways that contain BPA, but Tatler canning lids are indefinitely reusable and guaranteed to last a lifetime when used as designed for home canning. And
freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The Peter Schiff Show is on. Call in now. 855-4-SCHIFF. That's 855-472-4433.
I don't know when they decided that they wanted to make a virtue out of selfishness.
Your money, your stories, your freedom. The Peter Schiff Show.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Peter Schiff. Hour 2 of the Peter Schiff Show is underway. And the gold and silver rally is kicking into high gear here. Silver's now up about $1 on the day. That's a little over 2%. Gold up almost $40 now. I mean, gold's up 2%. Silver up about 2.3%, up $1. The Huey now, the high of the day is 604.74. Still about 5 points off an all-time record high, but almost a 4% gain today. Ron Paul's portfolio really kicking butt. But, I wanted to mention something again. Why did this Barron's writer choose a 3-year time horizon? Because a 3-year time horizon is about the worst time horizon you can find looking for gold stocks, because that starts in August of 2008, just before gold stocks dropped 70%. So if he'd have chosen a 5 or a 10-year time horizon, then you would have seen how phenomenally well these stocks have done over the long haul, and it wouldn't show that, hey, this is a stop clock who's finally having his day in the sun. He's had years, and in fact, he's had a decade in the sun for this phenomenally successful portfolio. I mean, I bet the average American can only dream of having a stock portfolio that is done even a tenth as well as Ron Paul's over the last decade. And again, no credit, none whatsoever. Just try to criticize him, impugn his integrity, impugn his patriotism. I gotta try to write a letter to the editor there to Barron, see if they'll print it. It's usually difficult to get these things done, but it really is. In fact, if anybody goes online and reads that story, maybe somebody wants to make some comments to that effect with respect to the obvious bias regarding that story and all the things that were not said that should have been said, given how well the congressman's portfolio had performed over a 10-year time horizon. But anyway, we got a lot of people that have been waiting on hold. Let me go to the phones. Rob is on line from West Hampton, New York. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. My question is, I'm a current college student, and I'm thinking about buying gold with the money I have saved for tuition and taking out a student loan to pay for my tuition. And I would like to know what you think about that.
Well, what are you going to study?
I'm studying economics.
Yeah, where are you going to school?
George Mason.
That's a good school. So I think you'll learn something about economics there, although I'm not really sure what you do with an econ degree. I think that you can learn econ on your own, so I don't know, what it helps prepare you for, post-graduation, because I think there are a lot of unemployed econ majors out there. But to the extent that you decide you want to get this degree, yeah, by all means, take out a loan. I mean, don't put real money in. Don't put your money in if you can use the government money. You could take advantage of a ridiculously low interest rate, and you could use the money that you otherwise would have spent on your education to make wiser investments. That's what I would do if I were you. And again, what are the wise investments? I think you invest abroad, you get dividend-paying stocks, you invest in emerging markets, invest in precious metal stocks and things like that. And ultimately, if you can get, you don't even have to start paying interest on these loans for years and years and years. And by then, I think my guess would be you'd have lots of capital gains or plenty of income, interest or dividend income to service that debt over time. But again, hey, my strategy is not without risk, so make sure you understand all the risks and decide for yourself what you want to do.
All right, great, thanks.
Yeah, I get that question all the time. I mean, same thing with real estate. I don't know, why would you want to put real money into something when you can borrow real cheap? I think that inflation is going to wipe out the real value of everybody's debts, just as it wipes out everybody's assets. The reason I don't advise that my clients buy bonds, U.S. government bonds or muni bonds or corporate bonds, is because I think they're going to get wiped out to inflation. Well, when they're wiped out, the debtor is absolved of that liability. See, when the government inflates its way out of debt, it inflates creditors out of their money, out of their asset. And so, but when the government wipes out its debt through inflation, it wipes out everybody else's debt. So you want to have debt. That's my opinion. Anyway, hey, I forgot we had Chris hanging on the line from earlier in the show talking about QE3. Chris from Manhattan, you're back on.
Hey. Yeah, so I was, I asked a question. What are the benefits to QE3 if QE, I guess the supposed benefits from QE2, even increase?
Yeah, well, you know who benefits from QE3 is Ron Paul. You see, Ron Paul is against all this money printing, but he's the one that benefits from it because he owns all these gold stocks. Remember, the reporter from Barron's accused Ron Paul of advocating policies that benefited his portfolio when it's actually the reverse. Ron Paul is trying to stop the policies that benefit his portfolio. But the reason he's investing in gold is because he's a realist, and he knows he's going to fail, that he's not going to succeed in convincing Congress or the Fed to stop spending and stop inflating. So it's despite the fact that he's trying his best to help the country, he's investing because he knows that he's not going to win. He's not going to be successful.
And then leaving rates at zero, the Fed rate, does that cause inflation on its own?
Well, what the Fed has to do to bring interest rates to zero is inflation, because it has to create a lot of money in order to keep the rates that low, because the Fed has to come into the market and buy bonds, buy treasuries in order to keep the rates low. Otherwise, rates would rise because people would be getting rid of their treasuries at these low yields, and that would force the yields up. So the Fed comes in to buy to keep the yields down. And, of course, also by keeping interest rates at zero, the Fed discourages people from saving money and encourages them to go spend it instead. And so that is all inflationary because money is bidding up prices rather than being available to finance capital investment.
And then what's the relationship between, the Fed rate, which is at zero, and the Treasury rate? Do they have to, move in tandem, or how does that work?
Well, ultimately, they are positively correlated, but because, you can still have a spread. If short-term rates went to 4 or 5%, obviously Treasury rates, long-term rates couldn't stay at 2 or 3%. You'd have a huge inverted yield curve, but generally a yield curve is positively sloping, meaning the further out in time, the higher the rate. But, yeah, the same actions that the Fed is using to suppress the short end is suppressing the long end. But, of course, the cheaper the Fed makes it to borrow money in the short end, it also brings down the entire curve because now you can borrow. You have all this cheap money coming in for zero, and now that money is chasing longer-term bonds that have a higher yield because people are making a spread, and so they're able to bid the prices of the bonds up and the yields down. But, the minute the Fed starts raising short-term rates, long-term rates are going to go up too.
And my last point, just comment, is that I think gold is far from a bubble in the fact that, I have, some financial advisor friends, and they're not even allowed to allocate more than 10, 12% of their clients into gold. And just that fact alone.
Yeah, if they would even do it. Most people don't even own gold. And remember, I was happy to hear, I forget when it was, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, where George Soros said he sold all his gold and he was totally out. And people were like, aha, you see, he's really smart. He knew to get out. And I was like, he doesn't know anything. But I was glad that Soros wasn't out because I don't want George Soros to make any more money. I'm glad he doesn't own any gold. I don't want him owning it because I don't want it because he'll use it to help elected Democrats. So the fact that he was selling his gold, I was very happy about that. But I also didn't think that he was doing the right thing. But everybody said, you see, it's going to go down. Look what George Soros is doing. Yeah, I bet he wished he had that gold now. Anyway, hey, don't go away. We got a lot more coming up on the Peter Schiff Show at schiffradio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show.
It's clear to just about everybody that the global economic sands are shifting. Have you positioned your investments to help ride the tide? For more than a decade, U.S. stocks have gone nowhere, even while inflation has steadily eroded the dollar's purchasing power. And now, with Washington's money machine spinning out of control and deficits and regulations swamping American productivity, U.S. stocks are looking even riskier, and the bond market may be the next bubble waiting to pop. But most brokers...
I'm going to go to the phones to John in Vancouver, Canada, who's been patiently waiting for just over an hour. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to talk to you. Mr. Schiff, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Excellent. Listen, I've been a member now for about 3 weeks, premium member, and I've learned so much from you. It is unbelievable. But my question is, you always mention, self-study. and I'm a big proponent of that as well. And I'm just wondering if there's any books you can mention that have helped you a lot with either economics, Austrian economics, or even personally.
Yeah, well, I've got a recommended reading list, which I know I need to update, but it has a lot of these stuff that I read earlier in my life up on the Europac website. So if you just go to europac.net, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see a link for a recommended reading list. Just click on it. And, you know, you'll see.
I don't imagine they taught you Austrian economics at Berkeley, did they?
No. There were, you know, the professors at Berkeley were very liberal, to say the least. Yeah. And I had a lot of arguments with my econ professors. So,
I can imagine.
And, you know, I used to, you know, one of the things I used to do is, you know, we used to write, you know, we used to have exams, and you'd have, you know, blue books that we used to write in, and we'd have questions, and you'd have to write up an essay of what the appropriate policy would be. And I would always give two answers. I would give one answer that I said, this is the answer for the exam that I want to count towards my grade. And then I would give the correct answer. So because I knew the answer that my professor wanted. If I gave him my answer, I would have flunked.
You had to prove you were being indoctrinated, didn't
so
you?
yeah, so I had to give him the wrong answer, but I wanted him to know that I knew it was BS, you know. So I was usually not too popular with my econ professors, and anyone that had an econ class with me, I still get emails once in a while or from people who went to Berkeley with me, because they remember me from class, but I don't remember because I argued constantly with my professors, and I know I talked to some young people today who read my stuff who are basically now walking in my shoes, who have the same frustration as they argue with their professors. And, you know, a lot of times, of course, you know, your classmates will just assume that, well, I mean, who are you to? You're just another kid. What do you know? I mean, they'll just assume that the professor knows more. After all, he's got a PhD in economics, and he's teaching. But believe me, somebody that's been listening to my show, or even spent 3 hours reading how an economy grows and why it crashes, probably knows more about economics than your typical econ professor at an American university.
Anybody that's confused at all about quantitative easing should read your book, that exact book, because I mean it's an easy read. It's got full of cartoons. It's actually quite funny too, but it describes so succinctly what is happening right now with the economy. It's perfect to read that. I encourage anybody to read that.
Yeah, I mean, it's written for a fifth grader can read it. The only people that might have problems are central bankers and econ professors. They might, but beyond that, I mean, you pretty much can understand it.
That's so true. I've read all your books, and oh my God, I've learned so much. Thomas Woods as well. Mm-hmm. He's a big Austrian guy, and I'm reading his book Meltdown right now, mm-hmm. and I find that he mentions you quite a bit in it, and that's very helpful. My second question is just quickly is I'm buying gold up here in Canada, physical gold coins, and I'm just wondering, do you think it matters if you buy the Canadian Maple Leafs versus just the bullion coins? Because they're both
Canadian Maple Leafs are bullion coins. So
sorry, but I mean the ones that bank issues. I mean like I know up here it's Scotiabank that issues the gold coins as well.
I don't know. I like buying a brand that's very recognizable and well known for liquidity purposes. So if you own Maple Leafs, I mean pretty much everybody knows one and will accept one. But it depends on how well known these other banks are. I mean, look at what the premium is you're paying to gold. Remember, I think the best place to buy gold is to go to Europac Precious Metals and buy it there. You can go to the website at europacmetals.com, or I think it's Gold 360 is the 800 Gold 360. I'll check out what the 800 number is. And you know, we've got a brand new report too. I've been trying to promote that we have on goldripoffs.com about all the gold scams, the classic gold scams that a lot of the gold companies are using to rip off people with these phony numismatic coins. But yeah, 888-GOLD-160 is the phone number for Europac Metals, and we can get you in the right coins there.
You hold that offshore. Do you think it's better to take actual physical delivery of your gold, or?
I like both. I mean, we have offshore through the Perth Mint, which we sell through my brokerage firm, Euro Pacific Capital, and Europac Metals has both physical delivery and we have a storage program in Switzerland. So I mean, it's good to have your gold, you know, in several locations. You know, some onshore, some offshore. You know.
You see things getting so bad. Like people are talking about mobs and overtaking cities and all that, and, shotguns and everything else?
I don't know. I hope not. But, I mean, look, if we keep making the mistakes that we're making, that's what's going to happen because they're going to drive this economy completely into the ground. And there's going to be a lot of misery. There's going to be a lot of hunger, be a lot of unemployed people, a lot of crime, a lot of resentment. I mean, this is what's going to happen if the government continues on this path. I'm hoping that we don't continue on this path, that at some point we veer from it.
Are we your friends to the north that'll better equipped to deal with it because we don't have the same central bank issues, or do you think we're?
Well, yeah, no, I think Canada is in much better shape than we are. So it's one of the reasons I invest up there. But hey, I still think that Canadians need to diversify, which is one of the reasons we have Europac Canada to help people get their money out of Canada. Not all their money, but a good chunk of it. But anyway, hey, thank you. Thanks for the call. And let me take another quick call. Who's on Jacob from Hicksville, New York. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Yes, hi, how are you? I'm actually 17 years old, and I'm prepping, getting my stuff ready for college and all. My dad's a doctor, and I come from a family of medical professionals. So my question was, where do you see the future of professionals in healthcare down the road? I mean, generally, medicine has been, I don't want to say a safe haven, but there's been a pretty good trend of steady growth, and it's been
it depends on what you do in healthcare, but certainly the industry of healthcare is
specifically being a doctor.
Yeah, well, I mean, for doctors, it's been a mixed bag because I know I have a lot of clients who are doctors, and they lament the fact that they used to be able to earn a lot more money years ago than they can today. Even though healthcare is so much more expensive, the income that doctors have is not as high as it used to be. They don't make what they used to. A lot of the costs are taken up in overhead and malpractice insurance. I think some of the doctors that now do the best, unfortunately, are those that just are plastic surgeons because there's not a lot of health insurance involved in cosmetic surgery. So some of the brightest and best physicians end up going into plastic surgery, which I think is kind of a waste. And I think the dentist, a lot of my dentist clients are making more money. Dentists and even chiropractors, successful making more money than MDs because they don't have the insurance and the malpractice issues. So it's really a mixed bag. But I'm going to continue this, talk about it a little bit more. So hang on. We've got a commercial break, and we'll be back and continue this and take more calls on the Peter Schiff Show here at SchiffRadio.com.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Hi, this is Peter Schiff. I founded Euro Pacific Precious Metals because many of my clients were being bamboozled into buying gold products that are poor investments. Using bait-and-switch tactics, many gold companies push products like numismatics, proof sets, and leverage contracts that are great for sellers, but a nightmare for buyers. My new company, Euro Pacific Precious Metals, only offers top-quality, well-known coins and bullion.
On the line? I don't know, maybe he dropped out. I can't. I've asked him to stick around. But, I mean, education, certainly there are a lot of jobs in healthcare-related industries because there's such an enormous government subsidy going into the healthcare industry. And so we have too many people in America employed in healthcare, even as doctors themselves are in general not making as good a living as they used to, even though their services are far more expensive. And a lot of that has to do with the bureaucracy and the insurance aspects of it that is very unfortunate. But I think if you are a doctor, if you have a medical degree, I think it certainly is a valuable degree. I think U.S. universities do a good job in helping to train and educate doctors. And I think that when you have a degree from a U.S. university, pretty much you can get a job anywhere in the world. So if things really get bad in the U.S. and you want to move, moving as a MD gives you a lot of flexibility in that you can pretty much get a job all around the world because people always need doctors, and American-trained doctors are among the best out there. So it's certainly worthwhile if that is your passion to become an MD. But as far as people who are looking for careers in healthcare where the services are not as in demand globally, I mean, I do think that we're going to see fewer employment opportunities in healthcare as the economy contracts and resources are more scarce. And so I would look at other areas ultimately that will expand as the areas that have been propped up by government, such as healthcare and education, see a dwindling opportunities. And I think that's going to be a good thing because we are spending too much of our resources on healthcare and education. Not that we don't need those things, but there is a limited supply of resources, and there are many other things that we need more right now that we're not producing at all, and that is a big problem. Anyway, let me go to Vince, who's calling from Panama City, Florida. Vince, welcome to the show.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, how are you?
I like listening to your show. My question is, with the stock market going down, and a lot of people think the stock market's going to go lower. You said the Dow and gold will be the same price. And with the dollar probably going to get crushed, how are the stocks going to be doing in the short and long term?
Well, as I said, look, is stocks, you're talking about gold stocks or just,
Yeah, commodity stocks.
Well, I mean, commodities depends on the commodity. I think commodities are going to go up so ultimately I think commodity stocks are going to do well. In the short run, commodity stocks that are not gold stocks have been doing poorly because oil prices have come back down. They're around $83 a barrel. Some of the industrial metals have come down, other commodities, because the world is thinking recession. But they don't understand that recession means more money printing. It means QE. It means inflation. That's a positive environment for commodities. And also, we still have a lot of growth in certain economies, particularly those that are going to be consuming a lot of commodities, like China. So I think that the people who are selling commodities because they're afraid of a U.S. or European recession don't really understand the fundamentals. And I think ultimately they'll be buying their commodity back and commodity stocks back at much higher prices.
So you think a lot of the inflation will be going into the stock market then, huh?
Well, you're talking about commodity stocks. But, yeah, of course, it's not where the inflation is going necessarily. It's that inflation is making money less valuable, and so prices are going to rise. As I said, I do not expect a collapse in the stock market. I don't think the Dow is going down to 2,000 or something like that. I don't even think it's going to get to 5,000 or 6. I think it might get to 10,000, a little bit lower than that. But I think enough money will be printed to put a floor under stock prices, but it means it removes the ceiling off of gold prices and other commodities, and that's what's going to happen. And so the government can't stop the real value of stocks or real estate from going down. It's going to happen. But what they can do is hide the fact that is happening by burying it in a bunch of paper, and that is what they're doing. All right, well, thanks for the call. Hey, anyway, I want to play a little sound from my old friend Ben Stein. You might remember Ben Stein for the Peter Schiff was right video, who you also might remember him from Ferris Bueller. But I used to debate him quite a bit. It was in the Peter Schiff was right video. He's the guy that said that subprime was a tiny, tiny problem that we shouldn't worry about. He also said that the financials were dirt cheap, that they were giving them away in cereal boxes, and that, Merrill Lynch was an astonishingly well-run company just before it went bankrupt and, got saved by B of A. And, of course, all the financials collapsed. So he kind of totally missed the boat when it comes to the financial crisis. And he's missing the boat once again when he is defending Ben Bernanke, who, of course, also missed the financial crisis and helped cause it along with his buddy Alan Greenspan. But he is defending Ben Bernanke for being a patriot in response to the accusations by a presidential candidate, Governor Perry, that he was a traitor. And let me play a little bit of Stein. I'm going to skip the first one and just go to play cut number 7.
The idea is to make money cheaper so businesses will borrow and then invest. Frankly, once again, it hasn't worked so far, but it is an orthodox classic move. It's a move by a man, Chairman Ben Bernanke, who wants to help his country recover. To call Chairman Bernanke a patriot doing his best for his country treasonous is a serious mistake. Governor Perry is new to national politics, but he's in a way a star, and I could see him someday in the Oval Office. I hope he'll get some moderation in his speech and some lessons in economics, and soon.
Yeah, well, hopefully he doesn't get lessons in economics from Ben Stein. He knows nothing about economics. I mean, first of all, Ben actually admits that it's not working. So why do it? I mean, he says it's an orthodox approach. Yeah, it's a classic Keynesian approach that does not work. He's saying the idea is to make money cheaper. So destroy the value of money. That's what you're doing. You're making money less valuable. How does that help businesses invest? It raises the cost. It raises the cost of raw materials. It makes investment more expensive because now capital is. It doesn't help the economy. To call his money printing patriotic. Anyway, let me just finish. Here's the rest of what he had to say. Actually, you know what? I meant to. I was skipping 5. So let me do cut number 6.
This economy is stuck in a cruelly slow recovery from a recession that started on Bush 43's watch. Mr. Obama, a likable man, is trying to get the economy moving again. Chairman Bernanke, who has made many mistakes at the Fed, is also trying desperate measures to get the economy moving again. One of the measures the Fed is using is to increase the money supply, or what Governor Perry would call printing money. Typically, this is a helpful move, although it hasn't been lately. It's not a radical move. It's not anywhere near a treasonous move. It's not at all clear that in an economy as weak as ours, creating more money would cause inflation.
Okay, so yeah, Bernanke is a nice guy. It's not clear that printing money in a weak economy doesn't cause inflation. That's when it causes it more. Inflations are worse in weak economies than strong economies. The biggest inflations in history have taken place in the weakest economies in history. That's where it's a problem because you don't have as much production in a weak economy, so the money is that much more causing prices to rise more than simply offsetting prices that would have fallen. But again, he admits that it's not working, right? That printing, it's not working, yet he still defends it. And he says that the economy is in a rut, that he's trying desperate measures. Yeah, it's desperate. I've called it a monetary Hail Mary, but to do desperate things, since when is that a good thing? Desperation. It's reckless. It's irresponsible. And yes, it is treasonous because it is undermining and destroying the American economy. It is going to be responsible maybe for a ruinous economy, and who knows how many more constitutional rights are going to be surrendered in the aftermath of this crisis because of what the government is able to do. And the enablers are Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve. Anyway, don't take your advice from Ben Stein. Hopefully you've learned that lesson by now. But we'll be back. We've got more of your calls here on the Peter Schiff Show at SchiffRadio.com.
Okay, your own point fight all the time, Tip. Your own point fight all the time, Tip. Your own point fight all the time, Tip. Well, then grab the microphone and let your words rip. Now here's a funky introduction of how nice I am.
The Peter Schiff Show.
Ever wonder why governments never run out of money? Whether spending or saving is the best cure for a bad economy? Or where inflation comes from? In How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, best-selling author Peter Schiff answers these questions and illustrates just how easy and fun economics can be. A Wall Street Journal and New York Times bestseller, How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, is published by...
The gold stocks are now within, I think, 3 points of a new all-time record high. Looks like Ron Paul's stop clock is right once again. Anyway, let me go back to the phones. Oh, there was a guy I was about to take from Japan. I don't know what happened to him. He had been on hold the longest, so I don't know. Maybe he'll pop back up. Let me go to Ed from Punta Gorda, Florida. Ed, you're on.
Hi, Peter. Nice to talk to you again. By the way, Ben Stein was one of Richard Nixon's speechwriters, and I'm pretty sure you Austrian guys don't hold Nixon in high regard. I mean, he's the guy who got Ron Paul running for office.
Yeah, no, he is. I mean, he was, probably the liberals' best friend. I mean, as people think he was a conservative. He was, very much a liberal. He's the one that took us off the gold standard 40 years ago, and really,
I think, the Bretton Woods and closing the gold window. But price controls. Hey, I was alive during that time. I mean, my father lined up for gas when I was a kid. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. But I mentioned too, when they put those price controls in, it was because inflation got to 4%. 4%.
That's it, huh?
I know.
Yeah,
We're way off
yeah,
that.
But Peter, I mean, come on. Inflation's only 2% now. You know
No,
that.
no. But the government even claims it's 3.6% year over year. So even the government's own figures are pretty close to where they were when Nixon put on the wage and price controls, and they claim that there's no inflation at all.
Yeah, was being facetious there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to the grocery, you know. I mean, it's ridiculous. I set a new world record every time I go. I just wanted to mention, though, I had a very positive experience with Europac Metals. Made a purchase over there, and I was wanting your opinion on something. I had a very spirited conversation with one of your men over there. I don't know if you want me to put his name out.
I don't care.
Bob Allen, and we had a very good conversation, for a good half hour, because I purchased this stuff, because of this dollar Armageddon that's sort of looming on the horizon, and I had to pretty much twist Bob's arm because I wanted the 1/10 ounce bullion coins. And he didn't want me to buy them because the markup, he wanted to save me money.
Yeah, I mean, when you buy the 1/10 ouncers, if you buy 10 1/10 ouncers, you're going to spend a lot more than buying 1 ounce coin. So, I don't mind having some 10th ouncers for a small part of your gold just because they're easy if you had to barter them. But I do think that you want the bulk of your gold to be in a more economical form.
No, and I appreciate that he was trying to save me money. But if I'm out, dealing with a local farmer or whatever, what am I going to do with an ounce of gold?
Yeah, but I think you buy some junk silver for that. That way you have some silver quarters and dimes. Those are for really small purchases. But yeah, it does make sense to have some 10th ounce gold coins. All right, so maybe if you're investing $100,000 in gold, you can put 10, 15 grand of it into the 10th ounce coins, and the majority of it into 1 ounce coins. That way, you get more gold for your buck, but you still have some of the smaller denominations if you're bartering them.
It's amazing that you mentioned that because that's exactly what I did. And I wish you guys would stop calling it junk silver because it's anything but.
No, it's not junk, but that's just how the industry refers to it. But yeah, maybe I should talk to some of the guys again at Europac Metals to let them know that I am not opposed to people having a portion of their gold portfolio in these 10th ounce coins because I own some of them myself. I got some of those coins myself, knowing that I paid more for them, but just thinking that okay, they're good to have,
Well, I mean, my point is that if I'm just trying to buy a tomato or
well, if you're buying a tomato, you could probably buy one of those with a silver dime and have a whole bunch of them. Probably get like a whole bunch of tomatoes.
Me that everyone calls that junk silver. It's like that stupid dime is worth $3 and
yeah. Well, you can almost buy a tank of gas with it. So,
yeah, I'm telling you.
I mean, not a tank, a gallon. Yeah. All right.
But that's what I'm getting at is that an $1,800 coin. I'm not buying a refrigerator. I need something.
Well, that's why for my international clients, unfortunately the Americans, but the gentleman who was just on hold, I've got a caller online from Beijing. Europac International or Europac Bank is launching the Goldback MasterCard. So there you can buy gold from me and then take your MasterCard into any merchant and buy whatever you want using your gold. It doesn't matter how inexpensive it is. You could buy something for $10 and pay for it with the gold you have on deposit at Europac Bank. But,
excellent. I will look into that.
No, you can't. You can't do it. You're an American. I can't do it I can't use Americans. Only non-Americans. But maybe one day some American bank will do what I'm doing offshore. But anyway, hey, thanks for your call and appreciate your business. Hey, I do have one international caller on. Where did he go? From Beijing. Danny, welcome to the Peter Schiff Show.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Thank you for taking my call.
Thanks for calling and staying up late.
Yeah, no problem. I just had a question. What do you think is the best way to measure the wealth of nation?
I think you should measure it by their productive capacity, by their net creditor versus debtor, how big a creditor they are, their trade surpluses, their standard of living, of their people, how well they live, how little debt they have, how much savings they have, things like that. I think the measures where you just measure consumption is a very, very poor measure, especially if it's financed with debt, because that consumption is fleeting. I think you can look at how few people actually have to work. I think it's a good thing if you can have a nation where you have a high standard of living, yet only one person in a family works, whether it's the husband or the wife. If you can have one person working and the other person can stay home with the kids, I think that's a good sign. The fact that you can have a lot of leisure is a good sign. The fact that so many people don't have to work to provide for a good standard of living. I think a lot of the measures that we use today are not really appropriate, because it looks like the U.S. is doing so well because we got this big GDP number. But if you scratch beneath the surface, you realize it's really a facade.
Yeah, I mean, you have the GDP to measure the country's wealth, but why can't the economists come up with a better way to measure the...
I don't think they want to. I don't think they want to, because I don't think the U.S. government wants a different way. I think they like the way we do it now, because I think it's very disingenuous, and it makes the voters think that they're getting richer and more prosperous, even as they're getting poorer and their standard of living is falling. But, hey, thanks for the call. I want to see if I can grab a couple. We're coming to the end of the show. Next up is Charlie, who's calling here from Trumbull, Connecticut. Charlie, you're on.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for taking my call. So my question was, one of my friends stated that dividend-paying stocks are not the best because the capital they could use to pay dividends could have been reinvested into the company to grow. And he says all that dividend-paying stocks do is put downward pressure on the stock price. So I just wanted to get your take there, because I do have some dividend-paying stocks.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not true, because the companies they don't pay out 100% of their income in dividends. It's a percentage, and they use a percentage to make investments. But a lot of the companies that don't pay dividends, what do? They just use the money to buy back their own stock. I mean, that's not an investment to grow the economy. Or a lot of it just sits there in cash because they can't think of places to invest it. So I think it's better to pay it to their shareholders. And, of course, when stocks pay a dividend, the shareholders actually see some immediate benefit from the income of the company, and also it proves that the income is real. I mean, sometimes a lot of these companies report earnings, and a lot of it is due to the accounting gimmicks. I mean, the thing about a dividend is it means dividends can only come from real earnings, because if you don't earn the money, you can't write the check. I mean, a pro forma check might not clear. It might bounce. So I think it keeps the companies honest, and it keeps the executives, the people running the company, it keeps it reminds them of who they're working for. You know, if all they're doing is paying salaries and bonuses to themselves and they don't give the owners of the company anything, they pretty much begin to treat the company as their own piggy bank, as if the only thing that counts is how much money they earn. We want our managers who are running our companies focused on us, the shareholder, putting money in our pocket, returning profits to the owners of the company. They get their eye off the ball when they're not paying a dividend. Anyway, but hey, thanks for your call. I got one last caller, Eric, calling from Colorado Springs. Eric, you're on.
Hey, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, real quick. You got like a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out there are actually colleges that teach Austrian economics. Hillsdale's department is purely Austrian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean there are some good colleges that teach economics, Austrian economics. My only question is, what is the value of the degree right now in the economy? I mean, what kind of job can you get if you got an econ degree? Because there's so many people that have them. But, I mean, you can learn economics without going to a university. But certainly if you're going to study economics, by all means, go to one of the universities that teaches Austrian economics, because at least you're going to learn something, as opposed to wasting your time as well as your money. Anyway, talking about time, we are out of time. Thanks, everybody, for listening today. We'll be back again tomorrow with another full 2 hours of the Peter Schiff Show here on SchiffRadio.com, the gold standard in talk radio, and that gold standard is getting more and more valuable every day. Take care, everybody.